Good evening. Welcome to North Carolina Vietnam Veterans Lessons of Vietnam. My name is Bill Dixon. I'll be your host tonight here at the Nissan Emporium of Studios complex here in beautiful downtown Raleigh. Tonight we're going to do our second part of Vietnam, the Black Experience. We'll be hearing from one of our panelists with the symposium we did at North Carolina History Museum. Before we get started that, I kind of want to bring you up on a couple of things. Our next night for our show is November 11th, which is Veterans Day. We are not going to have the show that night for several reasons. It's Veterans Day. We want people to go out and do their veterans things. Amnon is going to be out doing his veteran thing, and I'm going to be on the road with Bob Matthews, Joe Harsh, and Paul White. We're going down to New Orleans to speak to the National Social Studies Conference there to teach the teachers how to teach the Lessons of Vietnam course that we have. And they'll be using this show and these and all the archive shows we have as part of their training and working with the students and so forth. So November 11th will not be a show. Now, the next show after that will be November 25th, and the show on that will be the third part of the Black Experience, talking a little bit about how the war in Vietnam messed up or weakened the civil rights movement, which is an interesting concept. But that will be the third part. That'll be November 25th. And then December 9th, we will have another special show. That one will be How We Said It. In Vietnam, we had our own language. As you know, there was a lot of young men there, and whenever you have young men together, they had very colorful language. We had different things that way we said things, stealing from English and stealing from the Vietnamese and stealing from the French. So that would be our December 9th show. December 23rd, we will probably have a show. I know it's just before Christmas, but we want to make sure that those of you who don't have a life, not at a Christmas party or whatever, can still come on and see the show. The women who served, we're going to eventually get that. Right now, it is still locked up in a machine at the North Carolina History Museum. I guess the History Museum can't come up with enough money to get the machine fixed so they can get the tape out so we can show it. November, if you're in the Raleigh Triangle area here, November 7th will be the Wake County Veterans Council North Carolina State Veterans Day Parade. It'll start about 9 o'clock on Federal Street. So if you're in the area, come down on Federal Street and wave at the guys when they go by. If you're in the military, come join one of the units. If you're a Vietnam vet, be sure to come join Vietnam Veterans Incorporated and march with them in the parade. And also after the ceremony there at the Capitol, which is where the parade ends, and then at 11 o'clock there will be a ceremony there at the Capitol, and after the ceremony will be the monthly POW-MIA ceremony that NCVI has been doing for the last 28 years or so. And then, of course, there's Veterans Day. Go out and enjoy the different activities different organizations are having on Veterans Day. I know several different organizations are having ceremonies or whatever on Veterans Day. And also, as you're going out about on this Veterans Day, if you see someone who got a jacket on or cap on or in uniform, go up and thank them and tell them how much you appreciate their service on Veterans Day. And look for them at the couple places. There's some free meals for veterans, Golden Corral, Applebee's, several other places. If you're a veteran, if you go online, you can get a whole list of different places. So at least you can eat well that day. December 13th, NCVI will be doing its candlelight service at the state capitol at the memorial there. It starts at 6 o'clock. If you've never been to that, you may want to come to that. And also November 10th or 11th, I can't remember now which day it is, but November 10th or 11th is also the Marine Corps birthday. So if you see a Marine out there somewhere, tell him happy birthday. And if you happen to see Joe Harsh out there somewhere, tell him happy birthday too, because it's his birthday. So that's what's going on right now out there, and as far as veterans activities and the shows coming up. Appreciate your tuning in every other week to see the shows. Hope we're giving you what you want. Please give us a call or go on to Skype, Computers 2K Voice, and tell us what you'd like to see in a show. I've got an email today from a guy who's written 7 books, a Vietnam veteran who wants to be on the show. So we'll be having more guests and so forth coming up as the new year. But now I'd like to turn it over to our producer, director extraordinary, and start off with the continuation of the symposium with the Black Experience with our 3 special guest panelists.
Well, sometimes I feel like that. It's depending on where you were and who you was with. If your company commander had a lot to do with it, that he controls a lot, kind of like a game. I used to call Vietnam, you see a tough unit. I said, ain't nothing but a game. You know, a legal game can do what they want to do. And basically do what the guy in charge. That's what you did. And I found out that in the unit I was in, when I got to Camp Lejeune, I used to hear guys talking about the drug problems that they had in Vietnam. And I couldn't even relate to it. In my unit, it wasn't no junkies, no quack, it wasn't no quack in Vietnam, but hey, it just didn't exist. Because way up north, if they thought you was messing with that stuff, you was on the next helicopter head south. Yeah. It just, you know, and I think as the wall kept moving on and on into the 70s, I think the drug deal got worse. Instead of getting better, it got worse. Yeah. And I think that's what brought a lot of problem into everything.
Yeah, the 67, 68, it was mostly, and not much of that was marijuana, but later it started into the hard drugs and got to be problems. But you see the movies with people smoking dope through the rifle barrels and all that sort of stuff, it gives a bad impression to all of us.
Yeah, when I was there, I heard of the guys getting marijuana, and they would boost it with opium, something like that. They would be boosting it with something to make it, you know, stronger, more potent. And, you know, but I could never understand that why a person, we're up north, you know. I think I've had friends tell me that if you was down south and you was up north, you actually fought 2 different wars. Up north, you was basically fighting the NVA.
Yes.
And NVA and the hardcore was entirely different. You know, there was some NVA and hardcore down south, but right there, they call it leather country. We call them coming right out of North Vietnam. And they were ready to fight, you know?
Well, the NVA soldiers were trained just like we were. They had just about the same equipment. They had tanks and everything else. Where down south where I was most of the Viet Cong up until Tet, and then they sent in the NVA.
I think they had a couple of weapons. We didn't have anything to match. Like an AK-47 and an RP. Hey, I don't think we had nothing could knock out a tank. Hey, and the AK-47, I think it was a super weapon. The M16 couldn't touch it. That's right.
All right, I got one more question before I go to Hart. Would you join Marines again?
If I had to join a branch of service, it would definitely be the Marine Corps. You know, it's a Marine pride. You know, you get kind of like, you have to be a Marine to know that.
Yes.
You know, that thing, you know, it goes real deep.
Yeah.
You know, once the DI told us when we graduated from Paris High, he said there's no fraternity in the United States can touch the Marine Corps pride. He said, once you graduate from Paris Island, you won until the day you take your last breath.
That's why they say it's once a Marine, always a Marine.
That's right, you know.
I'm gonna talk to Harley now. Harley, where are you from?
I was born in Wilmington, North Carolina. I was raised in Brooklyn in Bed-Stuy, and I went in the Marine Corps from Bed-Stuy. And so I grew up in the city. I do know what it is to pull tobacco, because I grew up, I didn't leave Wilmington or Leland, North Carolina until I was 12 years old. But my adolescent years were spent in the streets of Brooklyn. So by the time I got to Vietnam, I was hardcore already.
And you joined the Marines. You didn't.
Well, if you allow me to tell you, at 16, I dropped out of school.
Okay.
And I remember my father asking me, son, you old enough to make that decision? And I thought I was man enough to tell him, yeah. And he said, well, now you're man enough to take care of yourself. So I ran the streets for a number of months, and back then parents were adamant about you taking care of yourself. If you didn't listen to them, they didn't feed you. So after I experienced the fact of quitting school, and when my mother left for work, the door was locked. There was no sitting inside. When she left the house, you had to leave the house. So after a year of that, running the street, I joined the Job Corps at about 17 or 18 years old. After a year in the Job Corps, training for electronics, I got my draft notice. So I left Pleasanton, California, outside of Oakland, came back to Brooklyn, was in the street for a minute, and decided that wasn't something I wanted. And I decided, and I was tricked by the dress blues of the United States Marine Corps, and like a fool like y'all. You know, and it's been a nightmare ever since.
I discovered going through the induction center here in Raleigh. When the Marine DI came in and said, I'm short my quota, I'll take you, and you.
Yeah,
and they became Marines right there. So, yeah. But now, what year you went through Paris Island?
Yes. But first, let me comment.
All right, go ahead.
What you said, this is a Vietnam black experience, and I want to say that I commend you, because this is relevant, and this is the first time after 40 years that I've had anyone to bring up the issue that blacks had an experience in Vietnam. See, I watch a lot of TV because I'm a disabled veteran, and I watch the History Channel, and you would think that the way they tell it, we wasn't there. But I'm here to tell you, not my story, but my experience. We were there. If you look at the publications, we wasn't there. So I'm honored the fact that you bring up this issue and about the issues in terms of the disparity in the treatment. And there was a great disparity. And this is an issue that has not been addressed for 40 years. And we talk about why we're not in these organizations. We're not welcome, okay? We're not welcome.
Well, Harlan, we came back.
But no, I'm not going to make it about
color.
But see, what I'm saying is, you know, that's just an American problem that we've had historically. But to have someone with the courage to step up and put on a panel like this and say that we did have an experience, that we did have issues, it touches my heart. You know, it might be 40 years late, okay? But if these issues would have been addressed when I was a 22-year-old or a 22-year-old coming home from Vietnam, I probably would have never went to prison. You see, I probably would have never had a drug problem. And so I commend you to bring, because, you know, people are sensitive when we started talking about the issues of racial conflict, issues of proper justice to every combat individuals come through. So I just wanted to, you know, commend you on that.
Well, on behalf of North Carolina Vietnam veterans, thank you.
Yeah, I want to commend you on that.
It was a story. It was a story that needed to be told, and as you said, has not been told. We've got into this politically correct too much, and I think by getting your story out there is a healing process for all of us. I know when I didn't make any difference what color you were when you came back from Vietnam. The American Legions didn't want us. The VFWs didn't want us. Any of us, because we lost the war.
Yeah, and they'll tell you that in a minute.
Yes, it's changed a little bit now, but it's important to get, especially today with all the things that are going on across the country and so forth, that your story gets out there. And you were at a place that I visited, and talking about, I already talked about a while ago getting some red dirt on his uniform. He hadn't seen red dirt until he sees caisson dirt.
Yeah.
That stuff is the reddest stuff I have ever seen.
Yeah.
It's now a coffee plantation. You know what I'm saying?
I do believe that Vietnam closed the gap between the different racial groups.
Yeah.
Because today, some of the guys that was in my sport in Vietnam was, in the end, I had almost 80% white platoon.
Yeah.
And you know, today, we are still brothers. I'm talking about we are brothers today. And these guys, white guys, talking about some of them, I know I had one or two in Alabama, Arkansas. Hey, they went home and left home because the crap they had been taught all their lives. And they had never dealt with a guy of color. You know, the guy of color saved two of them's lives. You know, they got shot and pinned down.
Yeah.
You know who went and got him? A guy of color in a Puerto Rico, where he's of color. Hey, that's who saved the guy.
Yeah.
And his boys they used to talk about the stuff and gun whistles and stuff. Hey, they wouldn't come forward to get him. And he said, I'll never forget you guys. And he helped.
But Bill, you know, that we can sugarcoat things and we can braze over, but we still have the same problem here in America today. This is 40 years after Vietnam.
Definitely.
Now, as a Vietnam veteran, and just to give you a summation of my experience, right? I went in the Marine Corps at 19 years old. There was racism in Paris Island, South Carolina. I got those stitches in my head to prove it. Okay? There were comments and stuff, but I endured. And I became a Marine. And I went to combat. I was on 13 major operations. The most notable one was the Battle of Caisson at 881. I was on Prairie 1 and 2. I was on Hastings. In 9 months, I was on 13 operations. And I can tell you that I did experience discrimination in Vietnam, okay? And the fact that I got mediced out of Vietnam because I had an issue, I went on R&R, okay? And we need to address this here, and in terms of that, if we address the healings now, there's a bonding between Vietnam veterans because we had a common trauma, you see, and we become brothers because we see the disparity that exists in our country that we had to put our lives on the line for and come back, and we have powers to be that keep us separated. They don't want us to come together. They don't want veterans to come together. There's a common bond. Is when I run across a Marine, he see a Marine sticking on with me, I get acknowledged, black or white, because it's that one common bond. Yeah. But it's elements in our society that wants to keep a division, okay? And so I tell you that I had experiences in Vietnam where I was getting no duty, and they told me to saddle up, I was going to the bush. Well, they sent me to see the chaplain, so I went over to see the chaplain in one company, and it was asked that, what do you want to see the chaplain? I said, well, you know, I refuse to go to the bush. You know, I got 10 days no duty, medical no duty. And the sergeant called me a boy. And I said, a boy? I didn't know he was a sergeant in the shower. I said, boy, who you calling a boy? You know, and I used some abrasive language. Well, then the lieutenant comes out and chew me out. Next thing I know, I'm in a situation where I'm not going to tolerate this. My name is Corporal Ballard, United States Marine Corps. I'm out here killing people. You calling me a boy? I'm a warrior. So that led into an incident so where I wound up getting medevac out of Vietnam on Section 8. They call it battle fatigue. Because I refused to go back to the bush to be subjected to that double standard. Okay? Now, 40 years later, I got my disability. But still, there was a disparity and an injustice in terms of that I got a medical discharge. I didn't get no disability 30 years later, okay? I come back from Vietnam with a 6th grade reading level, no high school diploma, no marketable skills. My first job back, I was delivering groceries, okay? I had a spin number on my DD-214 that was telling all corporations that I had a personality disorder. Okay? They had to redo the 214s, okay, to take that off because it was discriminatory. Right? I come home, I got medevac out of Vietnam in November of 1967 after 13 operations. They determined that I had a pre-existing personality disorder, okay? A pre-existing personality disorder. They claimed that I was smart enough to fool their psychologists going into the Marine Corps, but after 13 operations up on Hill 881, where I saw a lot of Marines get killed, but here's the thing, coming back after serving my country, there was no services for me, okay? And from the trauma of Vietnam, I got caught up in the streets of Brooklyn, on drugs, on alcohol. The next thing I know is that I have children, and the one thing I learned, I wound up doing armed robberies and doing 8 years in prison, okay? But that's the first place that I got some psychiatric help, that it was mandatory that I see the psychologist. And when I first came, I told the VA, I said, listen, man, I got a nervous condition. I didn't know the terminology. All I knew was my nerves was wrecked, okay? Nothing under the law. I go to the VA for help, nothing under the law, okay? Now, in 81, I get arrested a second time. At that time, they give me a psychiatric examination to determine if the war had an effect on me. I started getting therapy. So I come back with a 6th grade reading level with a government that didn't help me, okay? I wound up in prison, where I eventually got a GED diploma. In prison, I got an associate's degree from Syracuse University, okay? I got an associate's degree from the state of New York, a BA degree from Syracuse University, come out, got a master's degree, and in 95, I was working on a PhD at UNC Chapter Hill with no help from my government, okay? And in 95, when a law student shot the officer over there at Chapel Hill, and I was in the School of Public Health at Chapel Hill. Now, all this was a struggle by myself, in and out from a government that I served, and I'm talking about a historical disparity when you talk about blacks and the military. Coming back, it's all right for us to die and share our blood, but it's not all right to come back and get equal treatment. I'm a Vietnam veteran today, and as a black man, I'm scared to go out at night. I'm scared to be stopped by the police. Because it just got that bad. Like I feel like it's open season when we talk about the black experience. The war's not over for me. The war's not over for me. If the police pull me over, I need to be docile. I'm a warrior. Okay? So the best thing for me is not have contact with the individuals that's really supposed to be protecting me when I got more fear of them than I had of the individuals in Vietnam. At least I can fight back. But here in 95, I'm working on my PhD at UNC Chapel Hill. The law student shoots a police officer, shoots a couple of dudes. I remember coming out of the School of Public Health, going up to Franklin Street to have lunch. Somebody said, you better not go up there. And I remember that day clearly. I'm saying, damn, this is like a war zone. And I'm unarmed. Okay? And from then on, I started having nightmares. And when I was getting my disability that year, because I didn't know what was going on with me. And see, my problem is, if I'd had the proper help, I wouldn't have a criminal record. I could have probably been the governor. I could have probably even been the president. You see, but now I got a criminal record. You understand? Because all that's possible in America, right? But we talking truth, and we talking reality, is the fact I got a raw deal. I'm not angry, I'm a little disappointed. My father served in the Army, my uncle served in the military. I thought it was my traditional duty. When it was time for my draft number to call, I didn't go to Canada. You see, I came back to America, and see, I didn't have the experience of being rejected coming off a plane. I had the experience of coming home, being medevaced out of Vietnam, put in a psychiatric unit in Japan, okay? Then put in a psychiatric unit in Queens, New York, at the Naval Hospital there, and being discharged. I mean, in a matter of a month or 6 weeks, I was out of Vietnam, in a hospital, in another hospital, and then discharged from the Brooklyn Navy base, and not knowing what was wrong with me. And they knew I was a disaster. let me loose in that street, okay? And having people laugh at me because I'm in the street with cars backfiring, jumping over fences and hiding, or getting covered, you know? And had to go through all that transition. And then today they want to say that because I've re-educated myself, got my thing, I'm a phenomenon. No, I'm a dude that has been given the opportunity, could have excelled to many different heights, you know? And so, and then one thing I said, you know, that in Vietnam, from the time of pass out all the way through, I understood and had the impact of racial terrorism from the day I went in the Marine Corps, okay? And I look today to tell you the truth, as one who has served my country, I don't feel I have the freedom to travel through it like everybody else. I have to travel through it with caution. I can never stand up and be a man and defend myself, because the next thing I know, I've got handcuffs on me, okay? Or I might have a bullet in my back. That affects me dead as one who has served my country, you know? And I'm saying it's a very relevant issue in terms of nobody's concerned in terms of what impact it has on me emotionally. That I need to be restricted at home because I'm scared of the fact. Give you an example. Pulled over by the police. Want my license. Where you coming from? Where you going? It's none of your business where I'm coming from or where I'm going. I live in a free country. But you have an attitude that you have the right to interrogate me. I remember that state trooper. I said, are you interrogating me? But fortunately, my wife was in the car with me. But when I'm alone, I need to be cautious. You see, that's a reality in America. And until we change it, and until we make an effort to change it, then, you know, I'm always have those fears. But and the question is, yeah, I will serve my country again as a Marine. And the one thing I regret that it's regressed so much. And we talk about the civil rights movement. You know, that it regressed so much, and so many people have to give their lives to say that, you know, I have a sign at home that says, for those who fight for freedom have a flavor that the protected never know.
Yes.
That's hanging in my study, I see it every day. Freedom, for those who fight for it, freedom have a flavor that the protected never know. And it's the one thing I'm always willing to stand up and make sure that freedom is available to everyone, you know? And it was just been an awesome experience. And when you invited me here, I was saying it was just an opportunity. If you let history tell it, we wasn't there. If you look at the History Channel, you'll see a sprinkling of us. But it's the one thing I know when I was there, it was a lot of minorities on the front lines, okay?
Either they make it look like the minority was the one scared, running and hiding.
Yeah,
you know, and some of the regular dudes, I thought, no.
And there was a double standard in all. When I left, I was up in I-Corps, I was up in Donghard, Camp Cameron, Contienne, all up there, fired on dead. When I went back to Da Nang, them dudes down there were laying in beds and having hot showers every day. I was wearing the same clothes for 40 days at a time. You know, that it smelled so bad that I didn't believe it was me. You know? But to come back, and this is one thing, and believe me, that this is still the land of opportunity. This is still the land of opportunity. I mean, you know, my kids have got a good education, not the government. I mean, I would have preferred to have the mental health services that I'm getting now after my own disability. I would have preferred to have the mental health services when I first came home. I would not have wrecked my life. I would not have limited my opportunities, you know. But by the grace of God, you know, I elevated myself through self-education, you know. But still, there was limited because now I didn't come in contact with the criminal justice system. It was all right for me to kill women and children. It was all right for me to flatten buildings. But it was wrong for me to pick up a pistol to take care of myself when nobody was giving me help.
I have a sign on the back of all my vehicles. It says, I love my country, but I fear my government.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things we learned in Vietnam.
huh?
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things
Right.
we learned in Vietnam
Right.
was you can trust but verify.
Yeah, and one of the things that hurt me today is that they're still using young men as cannon fodder for their politics. They send them off to Afghanistan. They send them and treat them the same way coming back. It's a painful experience. Is that the people that have powers to be don't care nothing about us. They will ship us out. They'll have us fight a war that's unjust. They'll have us fight a war about economics or about the power elite that's making more money and selling weapons, and bring them back and set them on the shelf like that, and they're still doing it today. They're doing it in Afghanistan. They're doing the same, but nobody will set up and say that, my next war is when somebody comes to the shores of America. My next war is somebody threatening my home. But they've been sending us off, getting involved people, bringing us back broken, okay, without the proper assistance. It's a shame when you live in America and they got to close down a VA hospital because you've neglected it and you're not providing the veterans with the services that they have. It's an outright shame, and these are the people that we voted.
No. I was going to say that, now this is a first-hand experience. When I came back from Vietnam, I was sent to Camp Lejeune as a weapon instructor. And you'd be surprised, then I was sent to Quantico as a weapon instructor. And this when I realized that most of your FBI and everything are trained by Marines at Quantico. Well, while we was there, when I first got to Quantico, Vietnam War was still booming. And this is when I found out that the AR-15 and the M16, do you realize when they sent it to Vietnam, they knew it was no good.
It wouldn't work.
Now that's the part that bothers me today.
They used us.
Like the Walking Dead, you heard the Marine, Walking Dead 1-9, all those guys got wasted because the weapons weren't any good. And the government knew it.
And that's what happened to me up the hill 81. We got ambushed, we were fired, my weapon jammed. Now, one thing I'm glad they taught me the low crawl, because I couldn't know how to crawl off the hill, you did? But we went up 3 days in a row to take that hill, and we lost a lot of Marines. But they gave us a defective weapon,
And see, it was all about money, too. You know that, don't you?
Oh, certainly.
It was about money. The AR-15 was sent to Vietnam, and that Browning, Colt.
The guy who invented the M16 also had a bullet that had low powder residue and a special oil, but the government didn't want to spend the money, so they gave us M16 with it had a lot of powder residue, which in the moisture over there it just clogged up.
That's right. But initially it wasn't the M16, it was the AR-15.
It was the AR-15.
It was the AR-15. That's the little toy weapon they brought over there.
The
it was no good. Okay? And we had to go out with it. And many of them jammed, But, back to the issue, the fact that how do our country use our young men, okay, and send them off to war and ill-treat them? That hurts me to my heart. It's to know when I went through as an African-American Marine and come back, and I thank God I was a Marine because he gave me the fortitude and the emphasis, because my attitude was, if I could die over there for you and fight for your issue, I'm damn sure not going to lay down in America and give up. You see?
And see, it was another thing there, too. It was poor boys and rich boys.
Mm-hmm.
We used to have a saying, when we build an operation, some new guys come in, we see a guy with a little soft-looking face, and hey, and we say, we got a rich boy coming in, and when he get there, we find out he was just as poor as we was.
Yeah.
That rich boy did never get to the bush in Vietnam. They never make it there.
But there was one thing really about Vietnam, and like you said, that we became green, I know in the Marine Corps, and many became buddies, but the division started when you come back home.
Yes.
See, the families and those that had their bigotry and their biases, they didn't want that. But I went to the race parade when they had the coming home thing.
Yes, in Charlotte, yes.
But it was just an honor. Is there was no color. It's the fact that we had that common issue, that we were all Vietnam veterans, and we had love for one another. But when we leave those things, then you have a different situation. You know, you can bring vets together right now, and they'll be good, you know? But it's those other social influences that don't think it's right. If I'm good enough to fight for you and good enough to die for you, then I should be good enough to be treated the same way. You know,
Definitely.
those things we need to work on.
This is why today I put a lot of emphasis on when people tell me, I got your back. That's the most important thing in my life. Hey, when people say they love me, that don't mean nothing to me. You know, tell me you got my back and have my back. You know, that's what means something to me.
And that's what we had in Vietnam.
Yes.
We had each other's back.
Yes,
You
sir.
know, and the thing about it, we might come back to the real because our cultural differences or our difference in music, this and that, and separate. But when we were called to saddle up, all that stuff was left behind.
That's right.
All that stuff, once we got to the bush, it was one green machine, okay? And even I tell you, like in Okinawa, when I went to Okinawa for jungle training, there were segregated parts of town, you know? I'll tell you the truth. In Vietnam, I had little Vietnamese call me the N-word. They learned it from somewhere. And that's the God's honest truth. I come close to killing one day. They're thinking I'm over here fighting for you, and you'll refer to me in a derogatory term. But see, people go and they poison certain environments, you know? And we see it. We see it in Afghanistan. We see the racism in Afghanistan. We see where the military men of whatever status is, they have a disregard for the human fact that they're urinating on people and doing diabolical things because it's a cancer in our society. And we carry it wherever we go. And if we don't address it here, everywhere we go, nobody loves America no more. Okay? There was a time that being American was an honorable thing. But we have a cancer, and people outside of America see that cancer and that we can't resolve it, you know, for the last several hundred years, and we still not addressing it, is that skin color makes a difference, okay, as opposed to your sense of humanity. You know, they don't look at your humanity. The first thing you judge. And so now the rest of the world is looking and saying, you know, America is a big bigot. You know? And that's an indictment on all of us who call ourselves Americans.
You know, the biggest disappointment I had when I come back home was that by then, I'm one of those guys who couldn't get wounded. You know, I went through 19 major operations in Vietnam. And I just, for some reason, the groups couldn't, the NBA couldn't shoot straight enough, or I ain't never been able to quite understand why 6% of the guys with me got killed and wounded. Now why is it? I was larger than most of them. Now I know good and well, if he can shoot that little bitty guy weighing 150 pounds, he can shoot me weighing 185 pounds. You know, I could never understand that. And then one day a guy told me, he said, I think the master got a lot to do with it. He looking out for you.
And a lot of it's, like you said, the propaganda of the leaflets and playing us against one another. You know, what are you fighting over here for, soul brother? You're not free back in America. You know, and which was true. It was true. I come back in the 60s and all the riots, and you know, this was a big disappointment. You know, the outright, not just the assassination of Martin Luther King, but the killings of the Kennedys, who was trying to bring about a transformation in our society, you know? And all of that stuff is not just orchestrated by low-level people. There's people who want to maintain the status quo. There's people who want to still be in the, you know, it's like today, they show you the bigotry. It's all right to bring immigrants in to clean your yard and wash your windows. But it's not all right to give them opportunity to become citizens. It's all right to bring in cheap labor, okay, so the bosses continue to make money. But in the African American community, you won't raise the minimum wage so you can make a decent living. Okay? I mean, we still got the same thing going on that was happening in the 1800s. It's still going on. It's designed. It's the same thing like the black codes of 1865. Friday night, lock them up, put them on the plantation. Go, I do prison ministry. It's a shame when you go into prison and the average age is 22 years old. And the majority is African Americans. Come on, that speaks something about our society. You know, and I mean, if we're 12% of the society, how can we be 90% of the jail? Somebody tell me that. Please. I'm just curious. And I'm talking about throughout, not just in Durham or Raleigh. I mean, talking about throughout the country. You know, and what it is a perception that we are no longer a needed label population. So you warehouse us and throw us away. And nobody's addressing that. And that's why I'm saying this is a very, very relevant dialogue. That we can go to war for you, but we can't give an even playing field.
I was disappointed when I was with a few minutes ago. By being able to go and do it all this time, you become tight. You know, you be so tight, you just don't understand how close you can be. And when a person says, I got you, man, you know, he got you. You know, no question about that. And then when I get out of service, and I see guys I know, guys I didn't know, and they'll tell you anything. You know, they'll tell you, man, I'm going west, and they be going north. You know, I wasn't used to that. And that was the hardest thing in the world for me to get used to.
And even to today.
Today, I have a problem with trust today.
But
behind it.
Believe me, and I don't want you to sound like I'm hostile or bitter. I still think I live in the best country in the world. Okay? And I do know that there's greater opportunities for my children than I had, you know. But it's the one thing, I know we're not perfect, but we have issues that must be addressed. And when you talk about, you know, it's one thing, I used to travel with Doug, you know, and after a while I realized I couldn't do it because if I get up in West Virginia, okay, and what I know is some people, when they get enough big, they will be rude, okay? And I'm up in West Virginia, in the wrong place, in the wrong town, okay? And knowing the history of my country, I need to get out of West Virginia, you understand? Everything being real. And so I got to realizing that, you know, you go some places and maybe it's not their intent, but it's their training and their behavior, okay? And some don't take into account. I'll give you an experience. I was in Albany, New York, working as a drug counselor, and I was in a vet group. And every time the group would be finished, it was this big biker dude, right? And so I was probably one of two minorities in the group. Every time the group go, we would go to Howard Johnson and have coffee and ice cream. But on the way walking to Howard Johnson, this dude would use the N-word. So every time I'm saying, I know he see me, you know? I know he see me, okay? And I mean, every week it would happen, we going to Howard Johnson. And so one day I had to ask him, I said, man, you don't think that's offensive to me? You know, he was a biker, but when he was confronted, now we became real close friends. Well, what happened, nobody ever confronted him, is the fact that what you're saying is offensive to me. You know? And I think it's a lack of social education. It happens. And one day I come to realize, it's not my place to be angry at my Caucasian counterpart who don't know any better. You see? And as much as my responsibility to educate my Caucasian counterpart in terms of what's going on. And when we have that interaction and that dialogue, things change. But if we just lay back and accept it, and see, the problem with me, if I stand, I might get a nightstick on my head or catch a bullet. So I need to be very cautious as to how I display my strength as a man. You see, because there's still some elements in this country that think I should be a boy. And I find it hard after being a Marine and a warrior to be anybody's boy. You know?
I have found out that most of the guys that is good to deal with was guys who was actually out there. Fight active. I'm not talking the guys in the rear. Now the guys was out there running patrols and pulling ambushes. But even today, I can walk up to a guy and I can pick one of them out. I can talk with him for 5 minutes and I can tell you what, when he done walk down that path, You know, he's a different guy. I don't care where he come from. He's a different guy than the guy did.
Let me ask y'all one question. And then we're gonna, y'all wanna get, guys wanna get the mics, right? We're gonna go into question and answer in just a minute, but I wanna ask you one question. You got a friend, a good friend. Do you see black or white when you look at him? Or you just see a friend?
See a friend. What did he say? If you got a friend, a good friend, do you see black or white?
Oh,
when you see
I definitely don't. You know, I got some of my best friends, like I told you before, is my brothers and their only. And a whole lot of them white boys. And we like that.
Let me tell you what happened to me is that I harbored a lot of bitterness and hatred. I come up in the South in the 50s and the 60s. I know what it is to be running in the woods. I know what it is to march in the NAACP and be spit on, okay? I know the hostility. I grew up as a kid walking in the sidewalk, and I grew up around black and white toys, okay? So I know the history of this country, and I'm very well read. But what I had to come to learn, and becoming a minister, I do prison ministry, I talk with young men. I realized I had to deal with my own racial issues, which some of them was justified because of the abuse and the stuff that I was subjected to. But then I realized I had to transcend my own hatred, which was brought on by the abuse and the being subjected to the humiliation as a man. And then I've come to learn that love transcends everything. You see, when everything is based on love, now I learn to judge a person not by the color of their skin, but by the content, really content of their character. You see, because I know that there's some African American males that means me more harm than a lot of Caucasian Americans. And I need to be able to discern between them, you know? And that's where, and so what I have is a generation after me that I don't teach that hatred to, you see? But it's a hatred that I lived and a hatred that I subjected to. See, coming up as a kid, when I went to the swimming pool, I had to run from the white neighborhood to get home. See, everything has been a struggle for me. Wherever I went, it was a battle. You know, and it's just unfortunately, those are some of the defects in our society, is that don't think that you're really free. You know, if you remember Howard Beach, there were some young black men who thought they were free enough to go into communities and didn't understand the barriers and got killed. You see, so I still live under that kind of constraint on a daily basis, that I need to be mindful where I'm at. And not only that, I need to be mindful in my own neighborhood. Because you got young men out there that's carrying guns, but they really need to be in Afghanistan, you know? And so after dark, I can't go out and get my white ice cream, because if I park in the parking lot and wait on it and somebody rob it, I fit the MO. You see?
Well, things have changed quite a bit along those lines. In our time, two guys may get together in a fight, and after that, they're good buddies.
Yeah.
But today, they got a gun.
Come back.
So to have to get in a fist fight and get it over with and become friends today, they shoot somebody.
Having shootouts in malls and Walmart and stuff, man. It's a war zone.
Yeah.
For years, I was a licensed weapon instructor. When I lost my license, I didn't reapply for my license. 10 years after I got out of the court. But still, a lot of people know me, and they asked me, when this big gun push came on, by the time Obama become, and I said, there are some people that don't need a gun.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't need it. Well, you know, they ain't got the brain power, they just shouldn't have a gun.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go to the question and answer, but I want to do something first. We want to thank y'all for coming. I got a shirt for each one of you. It says North Carolina Vietnam veteran, together then, together now. Everybody's one for you. I'm going to give you a Carolina blue one.
Thank you, Bill.
Man, I'll sit right there. I think it's 2 exes. So.
That worked. I'll get big enough for it.
Anybody got a question, wave to
by looking at this picture, I have a question about this thing. Okay, by being a Marine up north, we used to pull an operation with the Army sometimes. And let me tell you what used to bother Marines. The Army would come in there with these beautiful helicopters that's brand new. Marines helicopter have holes. You didn't need to look out the window. Holes shot through them, and you know, hey, and we could never understand why the aircraft couldn't leave us a couple of them good helicopters. Yes, we did. We
The Marine Corps one of those look like, what is it, the thing that comes to a frog, what's it before? Those dumpy looking little helicopters. Yeah, those look like a bubble on a big old. Yeah, those big things that the Marines use. They just kind of lumbered along.
Stage 53s.
I know there's some questions out there, Joe. I think that's.
Okay, I do not have a question. I like to piggyback to what you were speaking about biracial in the military. I went in the military in 1965. Okay, I have fought 3 wars, okay? One was segregation, Vietnam, and Persian Gulf. Okay, the way they did the system back in the days was by your Social Security. They can tell what color you are by your Social Security number. If you black, your 5th number is even. They don't have to look at your face. I can, the recruiter, I mean the board, Miss Cates. I never forget Miss Cates. She sent out A1 to all the blacks. Okay, back then, recruiter did not come around to black schools. So the black didn't know anything about Reserve and National Guard. And that's how you have more blacks went to NAM than any other race around. I don't know whether or not you are familiar with that system. And as today, during the Vietnam, there was a draft, okay? All blacks went to, most blacks went to Vietnam, okay? I went to NAM in 1969. I went over with 25th Infantry out of Schofield Barracks. It took me 25 days to get to Vietnam from Hawaii. 25 days on a ship. And when we got to NAM, we had to walk miles as a unit to, okay, that night we got there, what you call shelter half. Your buddy had a shelter half, and that's what you camped in for that night. The next day, you walked a little farther during the night. And walking down the streets of Vietnam and Saigon, we didn't know where we were going. We was young. We was young, very young, and probably ignorant too at the time, you know. But during that time, I went over with a battalion. And I stayed there 365 days. And you believe me, with the whole unit, the whole company with me, nobody came back with me. I came back by myself. I don't know what happened to the rest of the people, but it was slaughter there. But the good Lord must have been on my side. Because every time my unit went out, they got torn to pieces. That day, sometimes I have KP, and nobody comes back. Smoking gun comes back and tells that the platoon was annihilated by 50. But anyway, getting back to that, just like back in the day, in the 20s, they got blacks to go, okay? Then when we got out, they said, well, okay, join the army, our education, okay? 20 years later, what happened? It's silent. All the black was in the reserve, okay? What was activated? The reserve was activated. And who was in the reserve? Blacks. All blacks was in the reserve. That's how they still, as of today, they still trying to get rid of black people. Because back there with segregation, they wanted all blacks to go and get killed. Instead of fighting, go across the pond and fight. And that's why, and then 20 years later, the reserve was all black again. And what happened? Soccer came up, okay? they send us blacks again across the pond. You know, that's all I have to say because I'm picking back with all there. But I was lucky. I carried a 45 and a gold grenade launcher. I was strapped down with ammo. If you know what a grenade launcher is and a round, I had 20 rounds and a cable on my back, strapped across this way and strapped across my other side. So otherwise I had 40 M79 rounds. Anytime I had grenades on my chest. I had 6 magazines of 45. Luckily, I took booby traps. I got shot at, shot around, but the good Lord must have with me to bring back what really happened over there. These propaganda movies that come on TV, Green Beret, no. What was smoking dope when I was over there? There was the Vietnam, Eddie was smoking dope. Because I can remember, we had heat waves. They get online and come and charge us. We can fire as long as we want to. They'll still charge because they doped up on dope. Yeah, that's my story. I can talk for days about my story being on 365 days, but I'm gonna let somebody else pass the word along.
Thank you, sir. Welcome home.
Well, that's the show. What time we have tonight? We've got a few more questions and answers there. If you notice, the last gentleman talking about his experience in Vietnam, as he said, piggybacking on to the guys that were already there. Everything he went through, it didn't make any difference about your color of your skin, and whether it was brown, black, red, yellow, white, or whatever. We all the guys in the infantry went through those things that he was talking about. As far as the symposium, each person who got up and spoke gives their story the way they see it. If you don't agree with it, that's fine too. The next show, I encourage you to call in and give us your opinion on it. That's what it's all about. We're talking about the black experience, but we only got 3 gentlemen, and I believe they're very, very truthful with their experience. As they were talking about it before, if you were out in the field, it was different than you were back in the base camps. And looking forward to your input the next show, which is November 25th. Be sure and tune in. We're going to go on with our questions and answers, and also another part of the black experience, talking a little bit about the civil rights movement and the black experience in Vietnam. Again, thank you for tuning in, and looking forward to having you visit us again November 25th when we continue the third part of the black experience. If you have a friend out there who is a black veteran, be sure to encourage him to tune in and call in and give his points and so forth. Some time ago, I was invited to go to a movie. It was the Black Experience in Vietnam. The name of the movie escapes me right now, but I went there, and I tell you what, I was embarrassed. If I was a black man, I would have been incensed as well as embarrassed. It was the worst movie I have ever seen. Every cliche in the world was in it. They had the black guys coming on a helicopter, getting in a fist fight with the white guys on the helicopter coming into a hot LZ. You had 2 guys stoned out of their minds singing "I Heard It Through the Grapevine" right outside of a POW camp they were supposed to be rescuing. It was the worst thing I've ever seen, and it's time we get the real story out there. Again, thank you for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you November 25th, and be sure to go out and celebrate Veterans Day. And thank you for all you do for veterans. Good evening.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Health In with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, The Tanya Love Show, Your Healthy Pet with Gisela DiCarlo. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by Atomus.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters for professionalaapparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.